Every time you swipe your card, take a loan, or even open your banking app, you're feeding a machine controlled by a handful of powerful people. They shape nations, fund wars, and quietly rewrite the rules of capitalism itself. These are the finance tycoons, the hidden emperors behind modern civilization. We've all heard the names: Morgan, Rothschild, Rockefeller, Dimon. But what you probably don't know is how they used knowledge, timing, and relationships to create invisible empires that control more than just markets. Behind every financial crisis, there's always a handful of them, calm, calculating, and ready to profit from the chaos.
Their stories aren't just about money. They're about power. The power to make presidents kneel, governments borrow, and entire industries rise or fall. And yet, their true secrets aren't in the headlines. They're buried in the balance sheets, hidden behind philanthropic fronts, and locked inside private meetings you'll never see. Today, we're peeling back that curtain. From secret societies and backroom deals to the invisible threads that tie together banking, politics, and media. This is the real story of how the world's financial elite gained and kept their power. So stay tuned, because by the end of this video, you'll see how a few individuals shaped your financial reality without ever stepping into the spotlight. And if you find this journey as fascinating as I do, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to understand how power really works. Now, let's start at the very beginning, where every empire first begins to take shape. You see, in the world of high finance, information travels faster than money, and knowing the right people is worth more than any degree. Take the early Rothschilds, for example. Long before they were synonymous with banking dynasties, they were information brokers. In the early 1800s, Nathan Rothschild had a network of couriers who could deliver news across Europe faster than governments could. During the Battle of Waterloo, he knew the outcome before anyone else and used that knowledge to make a fortune. That was the first glimpse of how timing and intelligence could be turned into global power.
The Morgans followed a similar pattern. J.P. Morgan was educated in Europe, mentored by elite financiers, and connected to the British banking establishment. Those relationships would later allow him to stabilize the US economy during the Panic of 1907. Finance dynasties are born in elite universities, private clubs, and family alliances. A lunch meeting at Harvard, a favor traded at Yale, a deal whispered at the Bohemian Club. These are the invisible bridges that link the future power players long before their names appear in Forbes. And while talent and intelligence matter, they only open the door. It's trust within powerful circles that keeps it open. Every major tycoon, from Jamie Dimon to George Soros, has benefited from a small but potent web of allies who grant them access to the right deals at the right time. But building connections is just the beginning, because once they've built their network, the next step is learning to use it as a weapon. Once the foundations of influence are built, the next phase begins. The art of turning information and relationships into unstoppable financial weapons. Money isn't just earned, it's engineered. Leverage, derivatives, and credit became their tools of domination. They borrow against the future, create profits out of paper, and use complexity to hide the scale of their control.
J.P. Morgan didn't invent banking, but he perfected the art of using money he didn't own to control money everyone else depended on.
During the early 1900s, he consolidated industries by quietly buying controlling interests in steel, railroads, and electricity, without ever using much of his own wealth. The lesson? Ownership isn't power, control is. Modern tycoons like George Soros and Ray Dalio mastered the next evolution: macro strategies that bet against entire countries or currencies. Soros' legendary short against the British pound in 1992 made him over $1 billion in a single day. It was mastery of timing, psychology, and understanding the fragile architecture of global finance.
Then there's Warren Buffett, who plays a slower but equally lethal game. His genius lies in using compound influence, buying not just companies, but the trust of markets.
When Buffett invests, the world follows. That halo effect multiplies his returns because he doesn't just profit from markets, he moves them. And while their methods differ, they share one unshakable principle: control the flow of money, not the money itself. The banks, funds, and instruments they create become extensions of their will, shaping economies, policies, and even public sentiment. But wielding these weapons comes with a secret that few dare to admit. Every financial system, no matter how big, is built on confidence. And when confidence cracks, chaos begins. That's where the tycoons' true power is revealed. Not in how they create wealth, but how they thrive when everyone else is losing it.
Most people see a financial crisis as disaster. Tycoons see it as an open door. Because when panic spreads and prices crash, control shifts to the ones who stay calm enough to buy when everyone else runs. Look at JP Morgan during the panic of 1907. As markets fell apart and banks failed, he didn't flinch. Instead, he gathered the country's top financiers in his library, locked the doors, and refused to let anyone leave until a rescue plan was made. When the smoke cleared, Morgan emerged as the savior of American finance, and, quietly, its ruler.
Decades later, during the 2008 financial crisis, history repeated itself. Banks were failing, markets were collapsing, and fear was everywhere. Yet, amid the wreckage, the same elite institutions emerged stronger. Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan Chase, and Citigroup didn't vanish. They were bailed out, fortified, and rearmed with taxpayer money. For tycoons, chaos is simply discounted opportunity. They know crises reset the playing field, forcing weaker competitors out and allowing them to buy assets for pennies on the dollar. Warren Buffett's $5 billion investment in Goldman Sachs during the 2008 crash wasn't an act of charity. It was a calculated move that made him hundreds of millions when the dust settled.
This ability to profit from disaster isn't luck, it's structural. These men and women have access to inside information, political networks, and liquidity that the average investor never will. And when the economy breaks, the world turns to them for salvation. But that kind of power comes with another advantage: invisibility. Because while the public sees them as rescuers, their true influence expands quietly behind the scenes. By the time most people realize who holds power, it's already too late. The real empires of finance don't exist in the glass towers you see on Wall Street. They exist in the shadows, in shell companies, offshore trusts, and complex structures that even regulators struggle to trace.
This is the invisible infrastructure that sustains the tycoon's grip.
For every visible bank, there are dozens of subsidiaries. For every deal reported, the purpose isn't just to avoid taxes, it's to disappear from accountability. Take the Cayman Islands or Luxembourg. These small territories hold trillions of dollars in assets, yet produce almost nothing tangible. Why? Because they're vaults of secrecy, built to protect the wealth and identity of the global elite. Shadow banking is another layer. It's not just loans and deposits, it's an entire parallel universe of money markets, hedge funds, and private lenders that operate beyond traditional oversight.
And then there's the revolving door between government and finance. Central bankers, treasury officials, and policymakers often move into high-paying positions at the very institutions they once regulated. It's a quiet exchange of favors that keeps the rules conveniently flexible. This network of invisibility gives tycoons not just financial advantage, but political leverage. They can shape policies, fund campaigns, and influence global narratives, all while staying out of sight. To them, it's simply business as usual. But once you've built an empire that big, you can't just rely on secrecy. You need control over what people believe. And that's where the next layer of power begins. Influence over politics and perception itself. Money, politics, and media, three forces that, when connected, can shape reality itself. The world's most powerful tycoons understand that true dominance doesn't come from wealth alone. It comes from narrative control. Consider how JP Morgan financed both industry and government during wartime.
ensuring his influence extended from boardrooms to battlefields. Or how modern financial leaders fund political campaigns, think tanks, and lobby groups that write the very laws meant to regulate them. When finance tycoons control political donations, they shape policies that protect their interests. When they own media stakes, they influence what the public sees, fears, and demands. The line between public good and private gain blurs until you can't tell which is which. Rupert Murdoch controls media. Jamie Dimon shapes banking. Elon Musk influences markets with a single post. Different faces, same formula. Control the message and you control perception.
The 2008 crisis revealed this triangle in full force. Wall Street's biggest players caused the collapse, yet their voices dominated the recovery narrative. They appeared as experts, advisors, and heroes, while the same institutions that triggered the meltdown walked away richer and more entrenched in government decision-making than ever. And it's not just about money, it's about ideology. When powerful financiers fund universities, think tanks, and foundations, they help mold the economic theories that justify their dominance. Free markets, trickle-down, too big to fail. These phrases didn't just appear, they were crafted to sound moral while protecting power. At this point, the tycoons aren't just players in the system, they are the system. They can dictate narratives, influence elections, and steer economies, all while appearing as benevolent philanthropists. But power at that level doesn't come without cost. The higher they rise, the more fragile their world becomes. Because behind every empire of wealth lies a story of obsession, paranoia, and personal sacrifice. Behind every fortune that shapes the world lies a human being paying an invisible price. Finance tycoons seem invincible. Private jets, penthouses, luxury yachts, and influence that stretches across continents. But behind the boardroom doors and billion-dollar smiles, their lives are often consumed by obsession, secrecy, and isolation. JP Morgan, for instance, was so consumed by control that he worked himself into physical deformity. His nose became disfigured from a condition worsened by stress. He hid from photographs for most of his later life. His world revolved around absolute order, and he couldn't tolerate uncertainty, even in his personal relationships. Power had made him untouchable, but also deeply lonely. In modern times, the same patterns repeat. The higher the stakes, the smaller the circle of trust. Many finance leaders live in constant fear of leaks, betrayal, or public scandal. They protect themselves not only with lawyers and security, but by building emotional walls that make true relationships nearly impossible. Every friendship has a price tag. Every conversation could be a liability. Even George Soros, a man both revered and vilified, once admitted that great wealth creates a bubble of distortion, where reality bends to your will until you no longer see the world as others do. In those conditions, empathy fades. Life becomes a spreadsheet of transactions and probabilities.
Some drown in work, others retreat into eccentricity or philanthropy as a way to cleanse their public image. But deep down, many of them remain haunted by one truth: power is addictive. The more they have, the more they fear losing it. Sleep becomes rare, trust becomes luxury, and normalcy becomes something they can never buy back. And history shows, when obsession meets paranoia, collapse isn't far behind. Because every empire built on control eventually faces the one thing no tycoon can dominate forever: the consequences. For every empire that rises, there comes a moment when the foundation starts to crack. For finance tycoons, these moments often arrive not with explosions, but with whispers, investigations, leaks, or shifts in public sentiment that turn admiration into outrage. Think of Bernie Madoff, once respected, even admired, for his financial brilliance. His empire wasn't toppled by rivals or regulators, but by the truth. When his massive Ponzi scheme collapsed, it exposed how easily greed and trust can intertwine. He became a symbol of everything fragile about the financial world, the illusion of stability that can vanish overnight. Even giants like Lehman Brothers fell because of overconfidence. And when they did, the shockwaves reminded the world that no institution is truly untouchable. The same networks that once protected the elite suddenly became their biggest risk.
Politicians turned on them, regulators closed in, and the public, armed with outrage and social media, began to question everything. The system they built often cushions their fall. Scandals fade, penalties are paid, and new faces rise to take their place, often from the same elite circles. The machinery of finance adapts, evolves, and rebrands itself, just like a living organism protecting its DNA. Still, cracks do more than damage reputations. They reveal something deeper, the humanity underneath the empire. Fear, guilt, ego, and denial. These moments strip away the myth and show that even the most powerful are vulnerable to the same weaknesses as everyone else. Yet, time and again, history proves that these collapses rarely end the story. They simply mark the beginning of a new chapter, a reshuffling of names, but not of power. And as one generation fades, another quietly inherits the blueprint. Because in the world of finance, power doesn't die, it evolves.
When a tycoon dies, their story doesn't end. It mutates. The institutions, trusts, and foundations they've built are designed to outlive them, carrying their influence quietly into the future. Their names might fade from headlines, but their systems remain intact, embedded in the global economy like code in a machine. Take the Rockefeller Foundation or the Rothschild banking legacy. Decades, even centuries later, their reach continues to shape finance, philanthropy, and geopolitics. They rebranded power into something softer, influence disguised as generosity. While the world sees charity, the real currency being traded is access. The next generation of tycoons isn't just in boardrooms anymore. They're in tech, private equity, and digital finance. People like Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock, who oversees nearly $10 trillion in assets, more than the GDP of most nations. Through his firm's investments, he holds sway over governments, energy policies, and even environmental goals. The same pattern repeats across Silicon Valley. Financiers merge with technologists. Algorithms replace traders, and power becomes even more hidden. Money now moves at the speed of data, and those who control the networks control the flow of global wealth. Artificial intelligence, blockchain, and digital currencies are simply the next evolution of financial influence.
But here's the unsettling truth. For all our progress, the playbook hasn't changed. Connections still matter, information still wins, and crises still make kings. The faces may differ, but the principles remain timeless. As we look to the future, when human greed is coded into algorithms that never sleep, the next generation of tycoons may not need empires or titles. Their power could be invisible, decentralized, and unstoppable. Because if history has taught us anything, it's that money doesn't just buy influence, it builds continuity. And continuity, in the hands of a few, is the quietest form of control the world has ever known. From the Rothschild couriers of the 1800s to the AI-driven traders of today, the story of finance tycoons has always been the same: a relentless pursuit of control. Control over capital, over information, over the very perception of stability. They rise by mastering chaos, thrive in secrecy, and rebuild. The only constant is the hunger, that insatiable desire to stay one move ahead of everyone else. What makes these individuals so fascinating isn't just their wealth, but their foresight. They see crises before they happen. They shape systems before we even realize we're inside them. And while most people play the game of survival, they're busy rewriting the rules. So the next time you hear about a financial collapse, a market correction, or a policy shift, remember, somewhere, someone already knew. Someone was prepared, and someone is quietly collecting the rewards. Because in the grand theater of money and power, the tycoons are not the actors, they're the directors. And the rest of us? If you found this deep dive eye-opening, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to understand how the world of finance truly operates, beneath the headlines and beyond the balance sheets.